Thank you.
Nicely.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. It was great to visit with the students here at UMKC. Thank you, everyone, for doing that, and thank you for those students that took the time to tell us about themselves and give us some background information. It was a really great experience. Okay, Chancellor Agrawal gave his presentation prior to the break. Thank you for that. So for our next item, I'd like to turn it over to President Choi and Chancellor Agrawal for our strategic theme discussion regarding achieving research excellence. I turn it over to you, President Choi.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Chapman. Chancellor Agrawal and I will give the updates on research performance at Mizzou and UMKC. And at the November meeting at UMSL, Chancellor Sobolik and Dagani will provide their assessment of research and achieving excellence for those two universities. So let me first begin with performance at Mizzou. And I'll begin by sharing a line from UMCRR 320-035 that discusses why research is so important for a public research university. And as a reminder to members of the audience, there are only 4 public research universities in the state of Missouri, and all 4 are part of the UM system. The important thing to recognize is that the research that is being conducted by our faculty in the sciences, medicine, to history, humanities, and so forth, really do benefit society because of the broader impact of that research. In addition, research leads to economic impact. 3 years ago, we conducted an economic impact study for the UM system, and that's being conducted again this year by Drs. Marshall Stewart and Mr. Bill Turpin. And 3 years ago, our economic impact was $5.4 billion to the state of Missouri. We expect, because of the growth in research, the growth in the number of students, that we are going to have an even greater impact to the economic efforts of this state. But I'll tell you, as the president, who served for about 5 years and standing in front of 3 chancellors, that we recognize that the lack of investments specifically to achieve research excellence shows in the ability to attract and retain our very best faculty, the investment in resources such as buildings, as well as instrumentation. But we are also beginning to see a reversal, a measurable reversal that needs to be continued for us to achieve research excellence. So just a little bit of background for Mizzou in terms of our AAU membership. AAU is a group of leading 66 universities in North America, 64 American and 2 Canadian universities. And membership is defined primarily by R&D performance. And I'll share with you what the metrics are. But Mizzou has had a long history. In 1908, Mizzou was invited to join AAU along with University of Illinois, University of Minnesota, as the 16th, 17th, 18th members of AAU. And we've been members ever since. I got it. I'm advancing it. Okay, so the AAU indicators of research excellence, Phase 1 and Phase 2. The most important Phase 1 indicator is federal research. Second is membership in the national academies, faculty awards and honors that are prestigious and highly prestigious, and citations of the scholarly effort. And then Phase 2 incorporates USDA funding, state funding, as well as industry-sponsored research project expenditures. Number of PhDs that are produced, number of postdocs that are trained, and the quality of the undergraduate program as measured by graduation rates, as well as the disparities between Pell and non-Pell graduation rates. Is it mine? Oh, it's touchy. I'm sorry. It was me. Okay. Can you advance it then? Yeah, great. So I want to talk a little bit about underreporting of our research expenditures. In review of our research expenditures data, we noticed that our total federal phase 1 and phase 2 research expenditures were underreported by as much as 50 to 60%. This shows from the years 2016 to 2021 what the old way of reporting research expenditures would have been using the red dots and red lines, and the accurate approach of measuring research expenditures. And as you can see year by year, what that difference is in terms of underreporting. This is phase 1 R&D expenditures. Next. Phase 2, as you can see from here, is the much larger discrepancy between the old approach, where we were underreporting, and the more accurate approach. And this is very important because research expenditures are the most important measure in the AAU performance measurement. Next slide. So using accurate approaches, let's see how our faculty members have performed over the past 5 years. Next slide. So if we look at the total research expenditures at the University of Missouri Columbia divided by the number of faculty members over the years, from 2016 to 2021, it's increased 36%. Next slide. In terms of federal R&D, it increased almost 40%. And then phase 1, next slide, 42% for phase 1 research. And next slide, 40% for phase 2. Let's go back one slide. And the importance of this slide is that during the period of 2016 to 2021, Mizzou lost tenure-track faculty. Despite losing the faculty, despite the fact that because of lower enrollment, there was less revenue to invest in research, the university's faculty members rose to the occasion and contributed by performing better in research on a per faculty basis as well as a total basis. Next slide, please. Next one. So this is a busy chart, but I'm going to take this chart for you to go through this chart row by row. The second row, Federal R&D expenditures per faculty from 2009 to 2021, goes from 104K, 87K in 2014, which is a dramatic decline during the 6-year period, and then the ramp up. If we look at the total, federal research rank among the AAU, American universities, in 2009, we were 59th, then we dropped to 63rd out of 64, just one away from the bottom. And then because of the increase in research, we are now 58th on a per faculty basis. If we look at the decline in the second column, the second row, from 2009 to 2014, our research expenditures per faculty declined by 16%. That ranks us second from the bottom in terms of the highest drop during that period. But if we look at 2016 through 2019, 2016 through 2020, and 2016 through 2021, the percentage increase in our federal research expenditures per faculty now ranks us number 10th in the country using the most recently available data. So we are demonstrating that with the right investment, a strategic approach, we can make dramatic changes, but it also illustrates that we need to continue the investment strategic focus because we are still below the 25th percentile. Next slide. This, once again, is a little bit of a busy slide. I'd like to ask you to focus on the upper left quadrant, which shows the proposals, awards, and expenditures total per faculty. And I want you to go from left to right in looking at the data. The reason I ask you to do that is the most leading indicator is the proposal. We don't write the proposals, we're not going to get the awards. When we write the proposals, we get the awards, and we get the grants through which we can have expenditures. So while the total expenditures during that period grew by 36%, the total proposals is double that rate. So that means that the future does look bright. And look at the awards. The awards are higher than the expenditure growth. So every single category, whether it's total federal research, phase 1, phase 2, we are looking at a very promising future. And that's why it's important for us to continue with that strategic approach. Next slide. The reason that I have this set of slides here, and I'm only going to go through the colleges, is that a university's research portfolio is truly defined by the faculty members that reside in departments and colleges. So evaluating how colleges and departments perform and evaluating on a monthly basis is critically important for deans, department chairs, provost, vice chancellor for research, and the president. Next. This shows federal research R&D proposal values for all of the colleges at Mizzou from 2016 through 2019 through 2021. What you see in green illustrates growth in 21 compared to fiscal year 19. Red means that there's been a decline. So conversations are being had with those deans to ask, why is this reduction happening? There may be some valid reasons, but we want to find out how we can support growth year over year, because that is important for our overall research excellence performance. Next is awards, same thing. And we are going to look at what is the reason that arts and science and engineering has had lower amount of awards. But I want you to see what's happening in medicine. Medicine should be the largest fund receiver at a university, at an AAU university. Medicine is now dramatically accelerating the amount of awards that it receives, number of proposals and value of proposals that they submit, and the next slide will show increasing expenditures. In a 2-year period, to increase expenditures by $19 million is a phenomenal feat. Now that has to continue with the faculty members that we're hiring from other universities, as well as ensuring that the faculty members that we currently have are performing to expectation. Next slide. So with this growth, we must be very strategic and forward-looking about the opportunities where research proposals are going to be most likely funded. So I want to share with you the national landscape. Next slide. This slide shows since January of 2017 until this year, the percent increase in funding available at each of these agencies, whether it's energy technology from Department of Energy, NIH, NASA, and NSF, the percentage increases. But while the percentage increases are also very impressive, the magnitude of those increases is also very impressive. Next slide. This shows the total amount of research in billions of dollars associated with each of those funding agencies. The largest by far is DOD. DOD also funds much of its work at DOD bases, but they do have extramural research programs that fund university research, and sometimes university research in partnerships with industry. So we need to be thinking ahead and identifying what are the areas of priority for DOD. HHS is what funds NIH, Department of Energy, NASA, NSF, and so forth. Next slide. Within the American Jobs Plan, over the next 8-year period, we expect a $250 billion increase over that period to fund various sectors that can support university R&D, whether it's an increase to NSF or better preparation for pandemic response that comes from NIH and other funding agencies. So our faculty members right now, working with their Vice Chancellor for Research, are identifying how to make investments so that they can be more successful in getting some of these grants. Next slide. So for NIH, which is the largest funder of university research, here are the focus areas. NIH says right on their website, these are the focus areas of support. So when they get an increase in funding from Congress, these are the areas that are going to be supported. And I highlighted in blue areas in which those who study humanities, social sciences, can participate and get sizable grants that can help support their research. Next slide. This slide shows for National Science Foundation and the Office of Science and Department of Energy what the projected rate of growth is going to be in funding available through those two agencies. Primarily, again, supporting university research. National Science Foundation does not have their own research laboratories. It's all extramural program support. Next. And so, looking at the funding agencies and what their priorities are, we identify the key priorities for each of these funding agencies, whether it's biocomplexity or nanoscale engineering at NSF or biological and environmental research through Department of Energy emphasis areas. There are many opportunities for us to submit compelling proposals to support research. Next. So with that, let me turn it over to Chancellor Agarwal, and we'll both be back at the end to answer your questions. Chancellor Agarwal.
Thank you, President Choi. And thank you for the chance today to share our UMKC's blueprint for research excellence. In the past few years, UMKC has been moving very aggressively to advance our ability to conduct life-changing research in our university for the benefit of a greater Kansas City metro area as well as the great state of Missouri and our nation. So we laid out a very ambitious blueprint in a 2018 UMKC strategic plan. And we announced further plans to build on that and refine that recently through our new initiative, UMKC Forward. Now, the common theme amongst both of these is that we not only state our intention to grow research, but we're backing it up with planned financial investments that will allow us to increase the number of faculty researchers on our campus, to train and develop faculty to do research, and then also to create a supportive infrastructure around this faculty across campus by hiring more pre- and post-grant and other staff members who can support the faculty. I would submit that all these moves are absolutely essential to achieve the goals we have set for ourselves. And we have set some very stretch goals in our strategic plan, and they are quantitative and they're on our website. And as I will show you, we are making good progress, but we are not done yet. So I want to walk you through some of the metrics and charts that we have to date, but work continues, and there's lots more that needs to be done. Next slide, please. So as President Choi said, the first thing to look for is number of proposals. If you're not asking for funds, you're not going to get them. So as you can see, we are making significant progress over the past few years, and this is the leading indicator of what the future may bring. So good increase there. Next slide, please. Now, if you do that by faculty, on the blue line, you will see proposals per total faculty, right? And then we got to take into consideration that at the current time, most of the research work, the funded research work at UMKC is being done by a STEM faculty, STEM and health. So if you were to take those faculty and their capacity, so if you normalize it by the number of STEM and health faculty, that's when you get the red line, right? So we see a steady increase there as well. But as President Choi said, there's are funding opportunities for humanities and social sciences as well. So we want to make sure that the blue line keeps going up as well. But we are glad about the red line movement. Next slide. Now, these are awards. These are not in terms of dollars, but numbers. All brand new awards in those years. And as you can see, straight line increase over the past few years. So we are gaining momentum as we go forward. Next slide. And we are also monitoring our local other institutions here that do research. And this just came out in the Business Journal here recently, in the past week or so, where we stand with respect to the other research institutions. So at this point in time, we were number 2, right behind KU. Now, KU is much further ahead because they have the whole hospital system based here. But we are making progress. Next slide. All right, so what I showed you earlier was the number of awards, first number of proposals, the number of awards, and this is the dollar amount. So business booked, if you would. And as you can see, very significant increases from 38 million to 54 million in the past 2 years. And this is good. I've had, in my past life, I had the opportunity to serve as a vice president for research. So these metrics are looking, I mean, the trajectories are looking good. Our metrics still have to be met, but I think we are doing the right things now so that we can get to where we need to be. All right, R&D expenditures. So you may get the dollars, then how do you expend them? So this is, again, in dollars, and the blue line is total R&D, and the federal dollars that we also track, like President Choi showed, are in red. In both cases, we see since 2018 an upward trajectory. So again, good movement. Okay, next slide. Now, it's doing the same thing, normalizing this by the number of faculty. So if you take all the faculty at the institution, then you have the blue line. Now, that line, I must say, it's harder to compare institution to institution. It depends on what kind of disciplines you offer at the institution. If you have more of the arts and humanities, that line most probably will be flatter. So that's why I also like to look at the red line, which is where most of this research will be done. For us, it's 90% plus of funded research at this point in time is done by STEM and health faculty. And as you can see, that number has jumped quite a bit to almost 291,000 per faculty, approaching maybe the lower end of the AAU levels at some point. So we are pleased with that progress, but much work to be done. And this is, again, Federal R&D expenditures per faculty. I wouldn't say this is something I'm going to write home about just yet, but I'm very happy with the way the increase is. Next slide. Now, the other thing we are tracking is, in addition to just research dollars and grants and proposals, how about advanced degrees conferred? So these are master's and doctoral degrees. These do not include the health doctorates, right? So if you look at the doctorates, we are kind of holding steady, but as we increase the research, that number most probably will have to go up. We are slightly moving up at a slight angle, but we need to do better. What's more concerning is that the master's level has dropped over the past 4 or 5 years. Now, I was going to say that perhaps some of the rhetoric that's been out there in terms of immigration policies and others may have affected that. But if you look at our peers, next slide, please, we have identified a new set of peers for ourselves. And if you look at that, you will see that we are the ones that have declined the most. The others are holding steady. So that's something that the provost and I will be looking into and working with the deans to see why the master's level has dropped. Next slide. In terms of the doctoral degrees conferred here, I think we're doing better. Compared to our peers, we are in the mix with the rest of them. Now, here's the challenge, and I alluded to it earlier in the day. President Choi also brought it up in terms of number of faculty. There's going to be a certain capacity per faculty member, after which, once you exhaust that, they cannot give you more. And if your number of faculty, especially tenure-track faculty who do most of the research, if that declines, then that's not portend well for the future. So as you see here, we've got tenured in green, tenure-track in the orange, and then NTT in the gray, and then the total. But if you just look at the total, you'll see it declining. If you look at the green, that's overall of the past many years, it's a lower headed in the wrong direction. Next slide, please. And then this is, again, tenure-track, and then the total. And if you just look at the total, from 416, we peaked at 422 in 2016, and now we're down to 343. That's a significant decrease in faculty. We need to reverse that trend. Next slide. So what are we going to do about all of this? So in the strategic plan, we have talked about developing investment pools and endowments to support our faculty, expand the Office of Research Services, which we now have a new vice chancellor as of 2 years ago, and we are making investments in the support infrastructure, making targeted investments in equipment, capital improvements, core facilities, and then in promoting cluster hiring in certain areas as we go along. Next slide. So what are we doing about infrastructure? We have already started investing in grant writers, people who can assist in writing the very large grants, not the technical part, but all the support pieces that go with it. So these are $1 million, $5 million, $10 million grants. So the faculty can concentrate on the meat of the matter, which is the technical piece. Certified staff to do all of the post-award work, so the faculty don't have to handle all the business aspects of the grant. And then also cluster hiring within academic units in areas of data science and neuroscience and other biomedical areas, and defense in the area of engineering. We have always also committed to hiring new faculty, investing $5 million in salaries over the next 3 years, very strategic hiring of faculty in focus areas. Startup funding will be a little bit of a challenge because if you want to hire good faculty to get them stand up their laboratories, it requires an investment, and that's a negotiation piece with the faculty, but then you have to be market price at the end of the day. That's a challenge for us because you need one-time cash. And then building the faculty research skills and capacity through the CAFE model, and if you go to the next slide, this is what I showed earlier as part of UMKC Forward, but if you look at the green pillar, it's all about how to teach faculty to do better at research, and this needs to be a continuous process, not just a one-time process for faculty. Continuously work with the faculty to keep bringing them up to date. It's professional development for the faculty, which all other disciplines do for the employees. We need to do that for our faculty. And then, next slide, please. This is just to show you that we have quantitative metrics in a strategic plan, and we monitor them to see how we are doing. So in the circle, you see where we are today. Right next to it, on the right side, is the column which shows you where we thought we should be when we put the strategic plan together. So the research expenditures, we did not, don't have the latest numbers just yet as we're totaling it out for the semester. But as you see from last year, 36 million, our goal is 60 million, and I'm very confident we can get there given the trajectory that we have. Grant proposals, we had said we'll be at 475 in the blue column. We're at 468, that would be 98% So I think we're there. Proposed dollar amounts, we are there. Brand new awards, I don't think we specified exactly where we should be in 2021, but you see we're moving quickly. In terms of dollar amounts awarded, we're moving quickly. We have exceeded our 2021 goal. And where we're not doing as well is patents and inventions. And our Vice Chancellor for Research and our Provost are going to be working on that to make sure that as we do research and we come up with technologies that can help our community, can help our society, we make the effort to do those disclosures and patent those and then license them to industry that can then take it out to the community, but also as a revenue source for us. So that's one piece where we need to do more. All right, so going forward, the areas, number one, all faculty who want to do research will support the research. We'll never say no to research. We'll always support them. But as we strategically invest in certain areas, those areas will be data science, and that can be across all disciplines, including humanities and social sciences and medicine and the health and engineering. Defense, as I mentioned this morning, we are really good at that, and we'll continue investing in that. But the biggest piece will be biomedical. We have so much potential with the 4 schools and engineering as well, but 4 health schools and engineering, we can do great things there. And also now that we're collaborating closely with Next Gen Precision Health and beginning to hire faculty together, I think this will be an added boost to the whole effort. So that's where we are planning to go. I would say that we are doing well over the past 2 or 3 years, good trajectory, but still ways to go to get to where we want to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor Agrawal and President Choi. Great information. Curators, do you have any questions?
Molly, I noticed that one of your strategies you addressed was cluster hiring. And I assume that if successful, can often lead to, significant benefits. But have we been successful on the UMKC campus thus far with cluster hiring?
Curator Graham, this is a new initiative for us. I started this past year. So the provost is working with the deans. And for us, it will not just be, the cluster will not just be limited to one school or college. But for instance, in data science, those individuals can sit in different schools and colleges if they're all working on data science. But what we need to do is make sure that their expertise and skill sets complement each other. So then those pieces come together for the whole institution. So this will play out over the next couple of years to see how we get the cluster hiring done. But it will not be as much of there's a group at such and such university and we take the whole group and bring them in here. That's a different kind of cluster hiring.
Okay, and that helps out, but that is something that could be very beneficial.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Chancellor Agrawal, real quick, I was going to ask, sorry, Todd. Along the same lines, you mentioned hiring some grant writers, and I guess my question is on grant writers, is that have we done that yet, or are you just getting, obviously that's kind of the front edge of the research, I would think. Have you started that, or is that kind of a new initiative too?
We have hired the first one, but very recently. But again, that's to take the minutia out of the way for the faculty. So a big chunk of the grant application will be written by faculty, but they will be writing in the technical areas or the areas of the expertise. The grant writer will do the introductions and all, finishing it up and cleaning it up and putting the business pieces in there. So just support. Now, this will not be for every research grant. You get that kind of support if you're not aiming for $1 million or $5 million grants. So that's where those grant writers will come in, because those grant applications are very large, and they need a lot of paperwork to be put together.
Thank you.
Hey, Chancellor, you mentioned that your tenured faculty's number is going down, and so is there an optimal number that you're looking for to say our tenured versus non-tenure track faculty?
Well, I don't think we have done that kind of analysis, but in terms of when you want to grow your research enterprise, a lot of that work is done by your tenure track faculty because they're there for the long term, and so when those numbers are decreasing, you need to make sure that you don't let that happen too much. Now, you want to maintain your faculty to student ratios as well. Some institutions go the route of declining on the tenure track, but then trying to make up with adjuncts. And maybe you can get your teaching mission done that way, though I would argue that's not the best way to handle that either. But definitely, if you want your research to grow, you need to get more tenure track faculty in.
Okay.
Molly, could I follow up on Curator Williams' question there? I was noticing that as your faculty has dropped, your total faculty have dropped, that whole chart, your proportion to tenure and non-tenure track ratio has stood about the same. Are those drops proportionate to your enrollment? In other words, has our enrollment been dropping here, and that's driven the faculty drop, or has enrollment stayed steady, and then I guess it'd be our student-to-faculty ratio would go up? I'm trying to understand that correlation.
So it's a very good question. So when you look at enrollment, and I just looked at those numbers this past week, and if you look at a 10-year trend, undergraduate enrollment has dropped. Not as significantly as a faculty. But graduate enrollment has gone up, and our professional enrollment has held steady and is tends to go up. The faculty have dropped at a faster rate than the enrollment.
So is our student-to-faculty ratio then is going up, or are you making that difference up with adjuncts, so it's our
Well,
ratio
I haven't done the analysis with tenure-track as the denominator, but if you were to do that, then that ratio will go up. But we tend to make up for that by hiring NTT faculty or adjunct faculty and do a full-time equivalent.
So those numbers have probably gone up then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Real quick, President Choi, I want to commend you on your focus and your progress so far on the AAU metrics. I think that's really important, and I think that's a vigor you've brought to the university.
Thank you, thank you. A lot of hard work by a lot of faculty and administrators, but we still have a lot of work ahead, and that's why Mizzou Forward that I'll be presenting later this fall is going to be such an important investment. So thank you, Curator Graves.
And we echo that. The remaining, well, I'll speak for myself, I echo that as well, Curator Graves' thought.
Can I follow up on their comments? I noticed, Moon, just on doing some Holbrook voodoo math over here on the side, that over the last 2 years, your federal research dollars have gone up on an average of 15.5% a year, or roughly 31% over 2 years, though 1 year was much higher than the other. If we continue that rate of growth at 15.5% per year, how many years will that take us to, say, hit the middle of the AAU expenditures in federal dollars? Does that make?
Yes. So the median AAU federal research expenditure, not per faculty, but expenditure, I would say is probably about $300,000. We are at 160 million, I'm sorry, 160 million. So it'll mean that we'll have to double, and at 15% compounded, maybe 6 to 7 years.
Okay, 6 to 7 years.
But the dramatic increase that we've seen is because there was great potential that was not being leveraged. It's providing faculty members with startup, with cost sharing, as well as course releases for submitting large proposals. And so that's why we've seen that dramatic growth. It's going to have to come through a combination of hiring new faculty who bring research grants with them and providing more resource for existing faculty who've been lacking those resources for many years.
Do you think you can maintain that 15.5% increase on average over the next 5 or 6 years?
Let me just say, we are going to try very, very hard. We're not going to let up. And it all depends on how we support our faculty to do that work. So thank you.
President Choi, the old way and the new way of recording the dollars.
Yes.
Is there a simple way you can explain how it differed?
We were not counting research grants as research grants. Simple as that. Just
Didn't think it was important?
well, I don't know if they didn't think it was important, but we didn't pay close enough attention to it. And that is something that we fixed at all 4 universities. And so we're in a much better place now.
President Choi, if there's collaborative like research between UMKC and Mizzou or NextGen, how's it get divvied out in the expenditures?
So if there is a grant that is received by UMKC, and some of that work is done at Mizzou or Missouri S&T, that component, the subcontracting component, gets reported at S&T and at Mizzou. So there is not double counting in that regard. And we also believe in shared credit. So we look at faculty research expenditures in which only the PI gets all of the credit, because that's how it's done in many universities. But we also look at shared credit because there are many co-investigators that are critically important to that conduct of that research. So we look at it 2 different ways. So in the same way, we share the credit with other universities.
You had one slide, and it talks about being 63rd out of the 65, and then it had a square further down that was 10th out of 65.
Right.
Is that with that new data that you were expecting this fall that was going to kind of give us a little different
That's
insight
right.
into where we stood?
That's right. We just got that data on August 28th.
Great, okay.
And so it's the most recent data, But we were down from 63rd out of 64 in terms of growth of research during that period, and now we're tied for 10th in
And-
terms of rate of growth. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was going to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Rate of growth is pretty important for the future, do you agree?
Yes, if we can continue that rate of growth, yes, it is. Mhm. Well,
Any additional questions?
okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, President Choi, and thank you, Chancellor Agrawal.
Get some-
Okay, we will move on to our next topic, which is titled COVID Discussion. And I will turn it over to Curator Lehman to start us on that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I want to just make a few comments. I'm concerned about vaccine mandates for faculty, staff, and students. And I'm a believer in the vaccine, to be clear. And I believe we should encourage, and this board has even incentivized, vaccinations. But I do not believe we should mandate the vaccine. I think that the faculty, staff, and students can make their own personal decisions better than we can. If we look at cases like right now at MU, I think this week, a year ago, we had 400 some odd cases. Now we're at 34, over a 90% drop, which is a credit to everybody here, President Choi, the other chancellors, the board, obviously MU Health. But this is not necessarily going to go away. And part of my concern is the silver bullet. You know, if we just bend the curve for 2 weeks, it'll all be solved. That wasn't the case. If we lock down, it'll all be solved. I think the lockdowns were a disaster with tons of unintended consequences. Again, I believe in the vaccine. I think we should continue to make it very easy for any faculty, student, or staff. But if you look at today, Sweden banned travel with Israel. Israel's the most vaccinated country on earth, and they are overwhelmed right now. And so the way I look at it is, we've got students who are newly enrolled. They've made their decision to go to Mizzou. They've moved in, and I don't think it makes any sense to create that scenario where we get them second guessing what we're doing. I think the students and the parents deserve some clarity. And I have a couple motions, but I want to hear what others say, obviously. I want to know how each of us feel.
Okay, we'll open the floor for discussion. Any comments?
Jeff, I share your position 100%. I'm not in favor of mandating the vaccine. But I am not prepared to make a decision. If you ask me today whether or not how I would vote to mandate a vaccine, I would vote no. If you're asking me today to tell me my attitude about it a year from now, 6 months from now, when I don't know what the COVID counts are going to be at that time, I don't want to take off the table that as an option if it becomes necessary. Though the administration have a hard time convincing me to vote yes. I don't want my hands tied today because we took a vote and said we wouldn't do that. And then if we came to the point that maybe that was a viable option, to have to go against what we said today. I think that the discussion is fabulous to let the community know that there is no intentions at this university to have a mandate. There is no intention of this university to close down the campuses. There is no intention at this university to go to online learning. Those are not the intentions. And that for those things to happen, it would take a vote of the board, and the reasons would have to be tremendously compelling to get this curator vote yes. But I'm not willing to tie my hands today because I don't know what the future holds.
Well, I don't want to speak for Jeff because he clearly can enunciate himself. I don't think you're asking anyone today to vote to say that we can't change our minds when we get new data. I think there are going to be different data points next month than there are today. I as a person, I'm going to say this so I don't get yelled at. I am not only vaccinated, I believe in the vaccine, and I hope everyone gets the vaccine. However, it is not my job, at least from my perspective. I wasn't put on this board to tell a PhD or someone who already has their master's and is 40, 50, 60 years old that you must do this. You must believe the way I believe. I just don't see that. And so I would be probably much harder to vote to get to go to yes. I also believe that once you allowed students to come to campus, and once we have already entrusted them with, you're already in the dorms, you're already in your apartments, now for me to come back and tell you or your family, look, you either get the vaccine or you leave my campus, I don't think that's fair. And so I come at it from one, I believe you have an individual right about how you're looking at this vaccine as an adult. Two, if you've already told these kids and their parents, like, had we have made this decision, and I know we didn't, and I'm not trying to second guess anyone. If you'd asked me this in July, or I would actually argue May, so that people had a chance to make a decision whether you want to go to one of the University of Missouri schools or you wanted to say, nope, I'm going to go to, I don't want to say any other colleges, but College X, because they're not going to make me do this mandate. I don't think it's fair for us to sit here today or next week or even next month unless there's something significantly changed about what the students are dealing with. And I understand that the hospitals are full. I understand I have friends who are doctors up here, and they are all emailing me and telling me, hey, this is crazy, you guys have to do something. And my response to them is the same, is show me what's happening to our student population that makes this mandate necessary. And if we get data later that says, you know what, we now have X, Y, and Z problems in our student population, in our faculty population, in something that is on our campus, whether it's, you know, in Rolla or Kansas City or St. Louis or if we have new data that says that, okay, let's reconsider it. But right now, as we sit here, I don't think we should be allowing any campus to mandate a vaccine. And so I guess I understand what you're saying, Greg, but I don't think that this vote ties our hands from having an emergency meeting if something goes wrong or reevaluating this before, you know, next semester or whatever, because you got to give people a chance to make their own decision.
I want to add something. I know I want to hear from others, but right now, I'll use Israel again because they now consider if you've had both shots, you're not vaccinated. You have to have the third shot. Pfizer today just rolled out they've just started testing their actual pill. So, you know, there's so many moving targets to this. And I just think, I think COVID is here. It's going to be here. And I think if we say we're not going to mandate this, I think it actually empowers President Choi and the other chancellors to operate this university and do what they do best and what they've done extremely well for the last 18 months, which is teach the kids and run the university. And because there's no silver bullet to, hey, let's shut down and go virtual. If we only mandate a vaccine, everything be fixed. I don't believe that's the way it works. I think it's going to be here. They're already talking about the next variant. I mean, it's going to be around. So I want to hear from others, obviously.
Any further discussion?
I want to respond to both Jeff and Michael. I agree with you 100%. The only place you and I disagree is there is no proposal in front of this board today to mandate a vaccine. There is none. So it's not going to happen. The president has assured this board that there will not be a mandate on the campuses unless this board approves one. So I don't understand what we gain by passing a resolution today that says there will be no mandate when there is no proposal in front of us for a mandate. And so to me, I see nothing but downside and no upside advantage of passing this resolution. And I understand we can change our mind. I understand in 3 months we could come back and say, well, what we voted on back in September really didn't matter because now we got a problem, we're just going to change it. I just don't think that looks very good. We don't need to do anything to accomplish what both of you want, and that is not to have a mandate.
You know, I would add a similar thought, and I've shared this with some of you. It sounds like we're trying to fix something that's not really broken. I can tell you during the 6+ years that I've been on the board, the communication between the board and university leadership is as good and as productive as it's ever been. And I think that's an environment that we and all 4 campuses benefit from. And I think that the issues that are legitimately concerned with here can better be handled by just what we've done so well in the past, is just communication with our president, exchange of thoughts and ideas. I think that's a healthier, more productive way to handle it, rather than some resolution that just really doesn't seem to be necessary. I just don't see a need for a resolution right now, what it accomplishes.
You know, maybe this conversation's sufficient, but let's be honest, this has been the open question that we've all been asked repeatedly. Are we going to mandate, are we not? What group would we mandate, would we not? So, I mean, maybe this conversation will signal that, but up until this point, I think it's a big question. And the chancellors have referenced that they get asked it about from their faculty and staff. We certainly get asked in the community. I'm sure each of us have gotten asked it from different constituencies.
Well, and not only do they need clarity because the rumors keep swirling, but Greg, let's be honest, is less than, I can count on one hand the number of days ago there was a proposal.
There was.
Okay, so it's not like this hasn't come up.
No, but the proposal was dropped very, very quickly because it was obvious.
Yeah, and that's my point, that there was a proposal floated, discussion, and I think we're beyond that right now. So
Well,
I think our system works.
And Marcy, I respect that opinion very much. One thing I do want to add, I believe there's a tremendous amount of institutional pressure, not inside the university, but other institutions trying to push to us. You know, I think that's how this works. And I believe that this board and our president and our chancellors, we can make our decisions for the University of Missouri. And we don't need the institutional pressure from not a couple places, but multiple places to go along with this. So that's my 2 cents.
But if those pressures are going to exist, they're going to exist and occur with or without a resolution.
Sorry, Marcy.
I mean, the pressures you're talking about will occur with or without a resolution. Because you're talking about outside pressure, so I don't see how a resolution changes that.
In fact, if we make a resolution, there'll be people that agree with it and people that don't agree with it. And we make a statement, we're just going to further stir this very divisive issue, not with just the university, but with the whole country. So we've done, what I wanted to start to say, I was agreeing with Marcy there, and I agree with Greg, that I was on campus at University of Missouri, Columbia last week for 2 days, and they've done a great job of promoting getting vaccinated, okay? Encouraging those people, our students, our faculty, the visitors to the campus, anybody that's got eyeballs, okay, to think about and please get vaccinated. Now, that's their personal choice, okay? We're not telling them they have to get vaccinated. I think that's a great place for us to stay. And again, I'm more like Greg with this issue. I don't know what we accomplish by voting on this, making a statement through a resolution by this board. That's all.
Remington, can you offer the student perspective, if you don't mind?
Sure, thank you. I would say so far, the majority, all the feedback I've gotten from students is we want to stay in person as long as we can, hopefully forever. That's the first thing. Let's stay in person, not virtual. And the second thing that has been inspiring to see more than anything is that when an issue arises, it's usually been able to be worked out through communication, where it's an issue of I'm not comfortable in this class or in this situation, and we go back and we either speak to the professor or somebody involved in that building or that area, and maybe it's just, okay, we take the front row out of circulation for this class, or we rearrange the tables to where people have a little bit more space. So students are finding ways, I think, to make themselves comfortable in all the instances that came to my attention without a strict mandate or this is the clear black and white thing. I think just the kind of common sense in the classroom when things arise. I mean, our students, our faculty, everyone wants to be in person and keep the operation going to where our students can learn, our operations can continue. So I think we find the best people, and we know we have the best people, and I think at some point you have to trust that those people are acting with their best faith in our system's best interest.
Robin, I don't think we've heard from you yet. Would you like to chime in?
You did, but I'm happy to, do you need me to speak again?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. Remington, I'm glad you said that. I think the timing part really concerns me because this group, we make a decision until we change it. I mean, that's just the way it works. So I'm not really worried about having a timeline on something. I mean, that's been true of multiple decisions in my 18 months on the board. But I think we talked about incentives. I was somebody who was not as pro incentives. I struggle with telling people to do what we're saying is the right thing. Like you, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm super excited to get the booster next week. I think you've all heard me talk about it. So, but I don't know why we have to tell people and force them to do something just because we decide it's the right thing for each individual person. I just am not willing to enter into each person's individual life that way. So.
And I'll put my 2 cents in here. I just think people need clarity, whether it's our faculty, whether it's our students, whether it's the public in general. I think they need clarity, and the clarity to me is no mandates.
I'd like to make a motion.
Jeff, please proceed with the motion.
Before we call the question, I'd like to hear Moon's thoughts on whether a mandate or anything helps him, because I think one of the pressures we're getting is that we're spending time on something that I think all of us are like, no, we're not going to do this. And if he has guidance, and if the chancellor has guidance, like, look, when a faculty or a student or a parent or somebody called and said, are you guys going to do this? Our board has voted no. And so if it changes, we would let you know. And I don't know if that helps, hurts, or what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you, Curator Williams. For me, the most important thing is my responsibility in ensuring that we meet our mission, and that is excellent education that is conducted through in-person learning, in-person operation for research, engagement that we do in extension and healthcare. Those are the most important things that I think about. And the issues that the curators have mentioned, there are so many elements that I agree with. Personal freedom. Let's not tell someone to just do something just because we believe in it. But I do believe in the vaccine. I do believe in the data that I see that says that those who have received the vaccine are less likely to get sick, less likely to get into the hospital, and less likely to die compared to those that have not received the vaccine. There's also data that seems to suggest that they are less likely to shed the virus to others. And when we're operating a classroom that has 100, 200 individuals, and one person becomes sick, and that person then is in close contact with up to 15 to 25 students, and that is repeated for 5 separate classes, imagine the exponential growth that can create. And so those are the things that I worry about. And I know that having our faculty, students, and staff vaccinated will reduce the likelihood of transmission while they are at the university. That'll help me maintain the in-person operation. And so that is my belief. But I also recognize that it is the board's decision. And I brought to the board recommendations for the masking, as you may recall, in a special session. And I plan to bring all recommendations related to COVID, whether it's a vaccine, proposal for a vaccine mandate, or further masking mandate, or going to remote operations because the conditions at the university require so, based on my opinion, it'll come to the board for the board's approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, please proceed.
The University of Missouri shall not mandate new COVID-19 vaccination requirements for students unless required by federal or state law or regulations. However, existing policies may remain in place, such as MU Health's policy for students in patient and clinical environments.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
I would like a clarification, Jeff. The last sentence, last part of you said, except in clinical environments?
We have, if you remember, about 3 weeks ago, I think it was about 3 weeks, maybe a month ago, they said in clinical environments where they're dealing in the hospital and healthcare situations, those healthcare workers. Steve, you remember exactly what that motion
I
was?
thought that just pertained to MU Health.
And UMKC,
Yeah.
UMKC health delivery workers.
Have we already done that?
Yes.
Okay.
The point is not to change that or override that.
What if there's other situations where students have a much higher level of exposure? Would this then motion prohibit a mandate for those students? So, for instance, your dental, dental school, does that have do you have a COVID mandate vaccine there also?
Our mandate said that anyone that's delivering healthcare and is directly in contact with patients.
Okay. Good. I'm just concerned also with that wording, that there may be a group that we haven't identified yet that it may become a possibility, and I just see this as being, again, overly restrictive. But that's just my opinion.
And I have the same concern and fear. I think I think if you ask each one of us to describe what this proposed resolution actually means, that there'd be disagreement. I think that there's some lack of understanding as to how this would really carry out in practice. And it seems that we've had a statement, and we may want to hear from chancellors too, but it seems we've had a statement from our president that the fear, if that's what it is, that the fear that this proposed resolution tries to address should no longer be a fear. And I'm concerned if it is. Because we've heard that nothing's going to be done by the university, the president, the chancellors, without addressing it with the curators in advance. And then we would know specifically what we're talking about, if that is going to be the case.
Thank you, Curator Graham. Any further discussion?
Go ahead, Darrell.
I just said, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion and a second. Cindy, please call the roll.
Curator Burnsick. Curator Chapman.
Yes.
Curator Graham.
No.
Curator Graves.
Yes.
Curator Hobrock.
No.
Curator Holloway.
No.
Curator Lehman.
Yes.
Curator Winokur.
Yes.
Curator Williams.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, Jeff, we'll turn it back over to you. I think did you
Yeah, I have a
another
second motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please proceed.
The second motion is the University of Missouri shall not mandate new COVID-19 vaccination requirements for faculty and staff unless required by the federal or state law or regulations. However, existing policies may remain in place, such as MU Health's policy for faculty and staff in patient and clinical environments.
Okay.
Isn't that what we just passed?
No, one was for students.
Oh, this is for faculty and staff.
Yes.
Faculty and staff. So we have a motion on the floor, as Jeff just stated. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Further discussion? Second call for further discussion. Okay, Cindy, please call the roll.
Curator Burnsick? Okay. Apparently Curator Burnsick is trying to reconnect. Curator Chapman?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
No.
Curator Graves?
Yes.
Curator Hobrock?
No.
Curator Holloway?
No.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Winokur?
Yes.
Curator Williams?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, Curator Lehman, any further discussion on the COVID topic?
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on. Next is, does anyone, any curator, have any items for the good and welfare of the board? Okay, hearing none. We will entertain a motion and a second from the board to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Cindy, please call the roll.
Curator Burnsick? Curator Chapman?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Graves?
Yes.
Curator Hobrock?
Yes.
Curator Holloway?
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Winokur?
Yes.
Curator Williams?
Yes.
Okay. All votes in favor.
Okay, the motion carries. This concludes the public portion of the board meeting today. The board thanks everyone for their reports. President Choi and I will be available during the press conference in just a few minutes. The board will reconvene in executive session, let's say in what, 20 minutes?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay,
Yes.
20 minutes.
So we're changing rooms.
Which room is that in, Cindy?
Closed session will be in room 301.
Okay,
So we're just one flight down.
we'll reconvene in room 301 at, let's see, what time?
2:10?
At 2:10. Okay, 301 at 2:10. See everyone then. Thank you.